Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mofasa's book readings. My name is Julia, and I am your reader for the day. We're still on our book, The Third Alternative by Stephen R Covey. Today, we're moving on to chapter 8. Chapter 8 is titled The Third Alternative in the World. It starts off with a quote by Indira Gandhi. It reads, "You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist." Okay, without wasting time, let me just get into the reading. On the way to a rare holiday at the beach near Tel Aviv, Mohammed Dajani and his family approached a long line of cars waiting to pass through an Israeli Defense Forces checkpoint. Dajani's elderly mother, who suffered from asthma, became anxious and struggled to breathe. She had forgotten to bring her inhaler with her on the outing. Suddenly, she collapsed, the victim of an apparent heart attack. Trying not to panic, Dajani steeled himself to plead with the Israeli soldiers to let them quickly through the checkpoint so they could get her to a hospital. Dajani's life reached a crisis at this moment. For years, he had been subjected to these checkpoints. As a Palestinian with ancient roots in the land, he found it humiliating to be stopped and searched constantly by armed soldiers he considered aliens in his country. The Dajani family had lived in Palestine for hundreds of years. Centuries before, the Sultan had honored the family with the custody of King David's tomb in Jerusalem, a charge they had kept generation after generation. But then came the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, which many Palestinian Arab families like the Danjanians viewed as al-Nakba, the catastrophe and unjust imposition of a foreign government and a foreign culture. Dajani's family was uprooted. For many years after that, he says, "My big dream was to rid the family of the Israelis. At university in Beirut, he discovered that he could be an articulate force for his cause. Today, his office walls are covered with news photos of himself from the 1970s, speaking out to huge crowds about Palestinian liberation. Soon he became a lieutenant to Yasser Arafat, a leader of the resistance to the Jewish state. I believed for a long time that only force was the solution. The conflict over the Israel and Palestine is too familiar to most of us. It began in the 19th century with the rise of Zionism, a movement to create a Jewish state in what the Jews referred to as Eretz Israel, their ancestral homeland in Palestine. Anti-Semitism in Europe, culminating with the horrors of the Holocaust, led many world leaders to support an Israeli state, at length established by a United Nations Declaration on May 14, 1948. But Palestinian Arabs, most of them Muslims, saw Zionism as gross injustice to them. It was nothing less than theft of their ancestral homeland. They rose up immediately against the new Israeli power. In the following years, both sides suffered waves of suicide bombings, rocket attacks, violent uprisings, and assassinations. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has long since spilled over into a source of contention between the Muslim world and the West. Grand alliances threaten war over it. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict fail repeatedly. Peace seems frustratingly elusive. As complex and ancient as it is, this bloody argument, like so many others, is at roots the product of second alternative thinking. Each side essentially says to the other, my claim to the land is superior to yours. My religion is superior to yours. You must give way. The scarcity mentality reigns. It's a zero-sum game in which one side must lose or the other cannot win. In this chapter, we expand our view to apply third alternative thinking to the world we live in. Our Serious Challenge survey listed stopping war and terrorism as the most important challenge facing our world today. Here are some of their thoughts. Terror still is the most important challenge facing the world. It threatens to take away the liberty and progress established democracies want to serve the global citizens. If there were no wars to fight and terrorism to deal with, we would be more focused on improving our economics and reducing poverty. War and terrorism destroy the ability of people to save lives, provide for themselves and their children, and to obtain a solid education. The Israeli-Palestinian issue is only one sore point. We all have a stake in the peaceful, creative solutions that third alternative thinking can bring to our local communities. Our states and our nations, we need nothing less than a revolution in the way we debate and practice diplomacy. There are many exemplary people who are trying to get to the third alternative thinking in the Middle East, and their efforts can teach us much about the kind of synergy that's possible in our circles of influence. This next segment that I'm going to read is titled Peace Buildings, the Revolutionizing of Internal Diplomacy. It reads, one of those people is Mohammed Dajani. On that desperate day at the checkpoint when his mother lay dying, he discovered something that changed his life. His only contact with the Israelis to that moment had been at such checkpoints with young soldiers carrying machine guns. But now those same soldiers fell to work to help his stricken mother. They had 2 ambulances in place in minutes. They transported his mother to an Israeli army hospital because it was the closest facility. That afternoon, I watched my enemy trying to save my mother. It was a very important event in my life. For me, it was one of many turning points from us or them to us and them. Professor Mohammed Dajani of Al-Quds University is now one of the leading exponents of the third alternative in Palestine, an us and them paradigm. His remarkable change of heart led him to found an organization called Wasatia to educate young Palestinians specifically against second alternative thinking. The name of the organization comes from a verse in the Quran. We have made a Wasatian community, variously translated. The term Wasatia means something like the midpoint between 2 extremes. Thus, Wasatia is dedicated to moving beyond extremes towards a higher, more balanced approach to all life. Professor Dajani says, the roots of the problem lie in the fact that Palestinian youth are growing up learning two lessons: that the only way to resolve conflict or differences is through a win-lose formula, and that Muslims, Christians, and Jews are not meant to coexist, let alone thrive together. Of course, this is a classic second alternative thinking. That is where today's reading will end. With what I made out of today's reading is the fact that there is absolutely no problem with coexisting. I mean, we don't need to say it's either what I believe in and not considering what the other person also believes. So it really shows that we can all live in harmony without actually saying that the other people shouldn't exist and it is only your beliefs that are valid. Everyone's beliefs are valid and we can live in harmony with that. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You can get this video on YouTube, and see you next time. Bye.